This is the Dean Mackin Show on today's News Talk, TNT Radio.
Yes, my next guest, David Cotter. He's an academic, he's a musician, he's lecturing and performing on the international stage. He's performed and presented in 25 countries and is currently supporting Dr. Jordan Peterson on his world tour. His doctoral research at Cambridge concerns collaboration in musical performance. He is the co-editor of a forthcoming volume on electronic music, writes for The Critic, and co-organised conferences and taught at the universities of Cambridge, Leeds and Surrey. One very well-rounded individual. David Cotter, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Dean. Or should I say good evening, Dean? It's great to be here with you.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere. That's my motto, mate. Now, when it comes to, I'm just reading about this, the pursuit of beauty. Now, it's something, the old saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And I think it's an organic reaction. You look at something and I either think it's beautiful, it's ugly, it doesn't inspire me, or it does. Now, we're having, in universities, we're being told what we should and possibly what we shouldn't be thinking is beautiful. Do you find that as we move forward in time that our traditional sense of what we feel is beautiful is organically changing, or do you think it's being changed on our behalf?
I think in society, and we probably have postmodernist trends to blame for this primarily, but I would say that there is a sustained attack on hierarchies of value, hierarchies of beauty, and especially in the academy, there's a hard push towards relativism, there's a hard push towards subjectivity, which basically takes the idea that beauty is in the eye of the beholder to the nth degree. So whatever you, Dean, think is beautiful in the moment, in the here and now, whatever that might be, supersedes anything that could be viewed in an objective standard of beauty. And so I was part of a conference in Cambridge this last weekend, actually, which was called The Pursuit of Beauty. And it was hosted by the Roger Scruton Legacy Foundation, Roger Scruton being the late British philosopher, arguably the greatest British philosopher of the 20th century, if not of all time, who was really vouching for this, and trying to put us in touch with our past, put us in touch and preserve the hierarchies of value and the hierarchies of beauty of the past.
When you say beauty of the past, it's that which I mostly sort of gravitate towards. It is, and I don't know if it's because I've been programmed to feel what is beautiful or not, but I've always seen outside the box. I've always looked at a bigger picture in my life. I'd like to think anything that I consider to be beautiful or not, whilst I didn't grow up with classical music, I will quite often turn on the ABC in the car and I'll listen to it for an hour while I'm driving down to Sydney. And it's something that nobody ever subjected me to or made me listen to. I just find it and I go, it's different, it's interesting, and it's beautiful, and I like it. And it doesn't have to be like anything else. Just like music of a certain time, we have certain artists. I'll use Meatloaf as an example, and the music of Jim Steinman. It didn't really comply with what the 80s standard was, and because of that, it kind of outlasted the 80s. So what is, in the moment, what is, relative, subjective, if you will, sometimes it's a much broader picture that we need to see. We need to step back and have a better look at it, don't we?
Absolutely. I mean, there was a musicologist speaking at the conference. He's called Dr. Ian Pace. He lectures at City University, London. And he's a very interesting example, actually, because he emerged from the Frankfurt School, self-proclaimed Marxist. And here he is at a relatively conservative conference. And he was basically arguing that I'm a big fan of modernism. And I believe in technological progress and engaging with these forms as we move forward in music, in architecture, etc. But at the same time, I'm sick of this kind of lack of any kind of hierarchy of these forms. And so you had people like that who are coming at it from an almost quasi-progressive perspective. And then, of course, you also had people at the conference who were just basically pointing out that the only things being taught now at universities are, anti-establishment, they're anti-classical, they're anti-symmetry, they're anti-hierarchy, all of these things. And so the conference was wonderfully heterodox in that sense.
Yeah, somebody being as learned and well educated as yourself and who spends as much time still at universities doing various things, I have to ask, and I know that you could ask here in Australia, depending on which university I speak of, I would get a different answer for everyone. Do you find that universities are as and I don't know if I'll use the word as woke as people would have us suggest they are becoming. Are they becoming more that way? Or is it simply a stigma that has been attached to a small minority who are disproportionately amplifying themselves at the universities these days?
Yes and no would be the honest answer to that question. On the one hand, and the literature on this is rather clear, when lecturers or people working within universities are asked to report on their own political persuasions, it swings heavily to the left, to a very large degree. Some studies showing that almost 95% people are openly left-wing, so there's an imbalance. But I am also finding that the issue is far more nuanced than just a simple left versus right issue. And there are a lot of people out there, a lot of lecturers, who deeply believe in academic freedom. They deeply believe in hierarchies of beauty, let's say that, and they're also quite tired with kind of orthodox ways of thinking that have really accelerated in the last couple of decades at universities. So I see us as optimistically being at a turning point. That's my honest opinion.
Well, I like that.
We also see. No, I was going to say we also see those people that are disillusioned with universities take a number of different responses. There are some people who have decided to go and set up their own universities, their own teaching institutions, their own new universities. In Austin, in Texas now, Jordan Peterson is setting up a large, ambitious venture called Peterson Academy, which brings the top lecturers from all over the world to teach people for a nominal amount of money. So that there are attempts to try and rejig the university system, but then there are also people who believe at the same time that the things that are wrong with the universities can be corrected. It's not a lost cause. Somewhere like Cambridge, which has been around for 800 or so years, they're almost arguing that there have always been free speech issues. When the apple fell from the tree and hit Newton on the head, and there was the Copernican Revolution and all of these things, people always rejected the new hypotheses at the time. So in some sense, there's always been an attack on free speech, but maybe it's been really accelerated in the last 10, 20 years or so, and that we can recover from this.
And of course, you opened the door on, and I love that you did, Dr. Jordan Peterson, somebody that you're currently touring with on his world tour. How did you two get into each other's orbit, if you will, and how did that come about?
Absolutely. I'd written about him in a book called Jordan Peterson, Critical Responses, and I'd also composed this piece of music, co-composed with someone else, and we were touring with this internationally, and I got the chance to meet Jordan a couple of times, and I opened for some of his lectures here at the University of Cambridge, and then one evening last summer, I turned to him because he was going to play Wembley, and which is one of our biggest arenas in the country. And I said, could I open for you? And now he thought about this question for a good 20, 30 seconds with his eyes closed, stroking his chin. I didn't know what he was going to say, but he then said, how about you do the whole tour? And so that was something that I was very, very pleased to hear about. And he asked me from the off, he said, why music? Why should we be opening my shows with music? And the original idea is that this would very much, inverted commas, set the appropriate tone. So as soon as people come into the arena, they've had long days, they've had busy days, maybe they've been stuck in 2 hours of traffic. Instead of being presented with music on arrival, they're presented with high culture. And this really resonates with his whole philosophy. His whole philosophy is that you should get your house in order, that you should clean your room, etc. And all of these epithets, they're applied at the level of the individual, and they revolve around the idea of building yourself upwards, striving upwards. That could be in terms of mending relationships, securing meaningful jobs, etc., all the way to striving for the highest possible good, the transcendent level. So what better way to start the evening with music at the transcendental level? So giving people the highest possible image, the highest possible experience of something that they could strive towards. So that was our initial conception, and that seemed to be working quite well. But what's been interesting is that it's also worked at a deeper psychological level. Because if we think about the current state of our musical culture, is it based on listening to extended movements of highly intricate musical thought? No. It's predicated on hearing quickly exhausted, largely predictable melodies, music that we listen to in the background. That's how people generally listen to music nowadays, especially on the way to a show. So by bringing in this high culture, we're introducing people to intricate musical patterns. And what they're doing is their brains are becoming engaged with those patterns, so to speak. And on some level, there's no difference between being attuned to complicated musical patterns and complicated patterns of thought. Yeah. So in Jordan's own words, when he's coming on stage after having the music for 20 minutes or so, he doesn't need to work to get to the audience's attention. They're already there. They're already listening. They're already piecing together the puzzle of their lives.
You took the wind out of my sails, because that second part that you addressed was exactly what I was going to ask. And two people who I think are just going to add to each other, who are going to open the minds of all who go to see them. David, Cotter, I've run out of time. I very much appreciate you coming on. Anybody who can go and see David and Dr. Jordan Peterson performing as they travel around the world, I would go do that as soon as you possibly can. David, Cotter, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dean. It's good to speak with you.